6 o'clock. And I think Nikki is ready, so we will go ahead. We will begin now with the Pledge of Allegiance. So you can all mute and rise if you choose and recite the pledge along with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. So we are indeed going to head into executive session right off the bat here, and I am going to turn this over to Mike, if you don't mind, Mike.
I'm happy to do it, but I've been advised that you are reading the motion, but it doesn't matter to me.
Oh yeah, I do see that. I mean, I don't mind. I can do that.
You know what? Let's just shake it up a little bit. Go ahead.
So I am going to move to go into executive session at 6:01 p.m. pursuant to Purpose 3 to discuss strategy with respect to the litigation, specifically the matter of Maria Del Rosario versus the Nashoba Regional School District docket number 1885 CV01899. Based on my belief that having the discussion in open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the school committee. Executive session will include the school committee, Superintendent Downing, Director of Pupil Personnel Services, Joan DeAngelis, and District Legal Counsel Attorney Kevin Freitag. School committee will return to open session at the conclusion of executive session, which we hope will be at 6:30 or thereabouts. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rich. Any discussion? And we can take the vote. I vote yes. Karen?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And Brett?
Yes.
Excellent. So Dan, you can jump out and come back in perhaps at
Okay.
So traveling back to my agenda. We are now, as a school committee, going to engage in our final training session around superintendent evaluation. And we are lucky to have a special guest here, Dorothy Presser from MASC. Thank you so much again, Dorothy, for joining us.
You are welcome.
And Dorothy has a presentation that is in the meeting materials that she's going to kind of walk us through. And of course, this training is about the summative evaluation of Superintendent Downing, which is, what we do at the tail end of the cycle, whether the cycle be 1 year or 2 years. At this point, it's a 1-year cycle. And as we go along, Dorothy, would you like us to hold our questions until the end?
No, you can ask as you go along. That would be fine.
Okay, great. So just throw that golden hand up on your screen, everybody. And if you have a question, Dorothy, would you like me to interrupt you, or can you see the golden hands?
I probably, once I start sharing my screen, will not be able to see everybody. So if you could keep track of that, I would appreciate it.
You bet. All right. So without further ado, I think, do you want Alita to share her screen, or would you rather do it?
Oh gosh, if Alita, why don't I, so that I can so I don't, not asking Alita to have to forward to the next,
Right.
to the next slide. So let me just get us started here. Okay, so obviously we're talking about evaluating the superintendent. And as Leah said, that we're concentrating on the very end of the cycle here. So just to review things, this is a 5-step cycle that started with goal setting and plan development. Goals were implemented, mid-cycle review happened, and now you're to the point of the final evaluation. So in completing that evaluation, all of you are going to complete your individual evaluations, and you'll have materials in front of you to do that. You'll have the superintendent's self-assessment, And I believe that that tool was shared with me, and it looks perfectly appropriate to be a good tool to do it. You'll also have any of the evidence or artifacts that the superintendent is sharing with you that show proficiency or progress towards the goals, or proficiency towards the standards that you've decided to concentrate on, the indicators that you've decided to concentrate on within the standards. And you'll also have the form to complete the individual evaluation. Once all those individual evaluations are completed, they go to someone. I can't remember whether the chair does it or whether you have a subcommittee. But
The personnel subcommittee is technically in charge of it, but as the chair, all the individual evaluations will come to me.
okay, so that you have the responsibility then for taking all those individual evaluations and turning them to one composite evaluation that is reflective of everybody's individual evaluation. One of the things that we talk about to make the process go a little bit more smoothly is to just, before embarking on that, just talk about how those individual evaluations are going to get put together into the composite. How will you look at the different ratings to determine what is the composite rating that you reach? How will you handle the different comments or narrative and put that together into a composite narrative? It's just once everyone has a good understanding and gets all their questions answered about that process, it just means that when you get to that final evaluation, you'll actually be talking about the evaluation rather than discussing how it got put together. So have that conversation ahead of time. And as you know, the superintendent is evaluated in public. It is a matter of professional competence, which is specifically excluded from executive session. So that's the rationale for the fact that the superintendent is evaluated in public. The way you evaluate the superintendent is part of the way the voters evaluate you as a school committee and school committee members. So that is the rationale for that. That note about the Supreme Judicial Court ruling, I think you're already aware of the fact that once that composite evaluation is available to all school committee members, it also needs to be available to the public. The rationale behind that is the composite has the opinions of individual members, kind of makes it a deliberation, so that the public should have access to that in the same time frame that you do. Do you see any hands, Lee? Okay.
I see no hands, no.
All right. So just a reminder, and part of the rationale, part of the reason for putting in the reminder about the rating system is to remind you that this is a goal-centered process. You have decided with the superintendent that there are certain goals that the superintendent will be evaluated on. So there's sort of a frame around what you're going to evaluate. It's not the wild, wild west of everything that goes on in the district. It's the goals that you've decided to evaluate on. So you'll give that summative rating on the goals, which goes from did not meet to exceeded. So on each individual goal, and then tie it up into a summative rating on the goals. A summative rating on the standards, which goes from unsatisfactory up to exemplary. And the reason I have needs improvement or developing in red is because for a beginning superintendent, a superintendent in their first year, you can call needs improvement developing. And the idea behind that is it's not really that the work isn't getting done necessarily. It's that this person is new to the position and maybe working towards what you consider proficiency and isn't quite there yet. But you can see that the work is happening, that development towards proficiency is happening. So rather than what can be sort of have a negative connotation of needs improvement, developing is a term that is perfectly acceptable and should be used if you want to use that rating for a new superintendent. And then we have the goals and the standards. Those two get combined into an overall summative rating that goes again from unsatisfactory up to exemplary. So when you're sitting there at your kitchen table with all the documents set out in front of you, or your laptop open in front of you with tabs to all the documents or whatever, there's a few things to keep in mind as you're putting together your individual evaluations of the superintendent. The same thing you'll be thinking about as the composite gets put together. You'll have the evidence and the self-assessment that the superintendent has provided. You'll have your own observations of the work that happened during the year. And I'm guessing that you didn't just get sort of a data dump of evidence at the end, but during the course of the year, you were hearing a lot of updates about what was happening, how the goals were being implemented, where things were being successful, where tweaks may have needed to be made to stay on track, and so forth. And you've observed the superintendent at meetings, giving presentations. You've observed perhaps at different events in the community. So you have your own observations as well as the evidence that's been provided by the superintendent. You're only in your first year, so you really don't have to worry too much about not going too far back out of the time frame that the superintendent is being evaluated on, but you are evaluating on a particular time frame. And so going forward, remember that it is from the beginning of the goal setting cycle to the end of the evaluation. That's the time frame you're evaluating on. So when you're putting everything together, you want to make sure that you're tying the ratings and the comments that you make to the evidence and the observations. So if you remember way back when we talked about this, one of the values when this evaluation model is done well is that it's more objective and less subjective than many evaluation models that were used in the past. And part of the way you make that happen is to make sure that you're using the evidence and observations to back up your ratings. You've asked the superintendent to provide evidence of their progress. So in the same vein, you should be thinking about, in a sense, providing your evidence to back up your comments and your observations and your ratings. Any hands yet, Leah?
No hands.
All right. So the challenge of the composite evaluation, I've put them together, it is a challenge to do, is it needs to be one document. Remember, the superintendent only has one boss, that's the committee as a whole. So that one document has to be the document that gives the superintendent feedback and guidance going forward from the entire committee. It can't be 11 different opinions that might not coincide with each other, that don't give good direction. You want to be able to give good feedback and good direction. So it really has to be one document, but within that document, everyone wants to be able to hear their voice. So that's part of the challenge of putting the composite together. When you're deciding on the ratings of the composite, this is another discussion that's good to have ahead of time. You need to land on a rating. So it can't just be here were the 11 ratings. I mean, you can read what they all were and say, and that led us to the rating of proficient, that led us to the rating of met the goal. But you don't want to just have a tally without landing someplace. And not just an average either. I mean, it might work out that an average is where you land, but just taking an average could skew it one way or the other, which really isn't where the comments decide where something should land. So hopefully, part of the reason we talk about doing a lot of discussion about what the goals are intended to accomplish at the beginning of the process is so that at the end, the ratings are much tighter and it's not such a challenge to figure out where they should be. There is also cases sometimes when if people know an average is going to be used and they feel very strongly, they try to influence the average by weighting their ratings different ways. So that's another reason why we try to discourage using just the average as a way to determine the ratings. And then another discussion to have is how comments are handled. Sometimes committees say that at least 2 people have to make a similar comment for it to get into the composite comments. And sometimes the compiler will take the comments and sort of figure out where are the common threads here that I can put into the comments, or take some key comments that are reflective of a lot of the comments that were seen to put them into the comments of the ratings or the comment of the evaluation. A lot of people are, most people are aware that the superintendent's evaluation is reported to the state. The only things that are reported to the state are the ratings on each standard, the overall rate, and the overall rating. So they're not getting the state's not getting all the comments. The state has, you decide how the superintendent is evaluated. They're not going to come back and tell you did a good job or a bad job. They're just recording what happens. And they're only recording those 5 things. So it's really a district, a committee document that's used to give feedback and guidance to the superintendent. So when you're thinking, again, to sort of frame around the fact that this is goal-centered, remember that the goals that you set were specific to the individual and specific to the district. You set the goals specifically for Nashoba because that's what moves Nashoba forward. So you want to consider the progress that was made on the action items in the goals. And to do that, also refer to the evidence that's been provided to you. And the standards, as we said before, the standards and indicators are the same for all superintendents throughout the state, and give an understanding of what effective leadership and teaching practice looks like. And you remember the 4 standards: the instructional leadership, management and operations, family and community engagement, and professional culture. And then when you think of the ratings for the standards, remember that proficient is understood to be fully satisfactory. It is an expected level of performance. So while sometimes people can think of the word proficient as good enough, in the eyes of the state in creating this evaluation model, proficient is rigorous and expected. So it is, think about that as you're thinking about the difference between proficient and exemplary and so forth. Exemplary exceeds the high standard of proficiency. So it should be reserved for performance where the person is a model for others. And when you look at the different indicators that you've picked and you look at the exemplary, proficient, needs improvement / developing, or unsatisfactory, you'll always see bolded language in proficient because that's the language in the regulations. And almost always in exemplary, you'll see the phrase models this practice for others. So doing it on a level that's really a model for others regionally or in the state. Remember that needs improvement can be determined as developing for a superintendent that's new to the position. So just someone who you see moving towards that proficiency, developing, but new to the position, not quite there yet. And then as time goes on, it becomes more indication of below the requirements for the standard. And then unsatisfactory when something has been rated as needs improvement and no improvement has been seen or is consistently below standards. I know you are a little bit behind time, so maybe this will help you get back on track. So what, do you have any questions? That was a really sort of quick and dirty summary of what to be thinking about as you're putting together that final evaluation and considering what you need to move forward. I think I also sent ahead our document on the model evaluation that is more narrative of pieces of this, so people have that document as well. And I'm always available to answer any questions that might come up.
Great. Thank you so much, Dorothy. That was very easy to follow and understand. Karen has a question. Let's go there.
Yeah, Dorothy, I just want to make sure I understood you correctly. So the public record piece of the evaluation is the final evaluation that Leah compiles from all of our individual evaluations, or are the individual evaluations also public record?
The individual evaluations are public record if anyone asks for them. They are public record, but they do not have to be released. They're not, I mean, you're generally not sitting with all and reading through all the individual ones at a meeting. So they're not a document that's used at the meeting. And they don't have to be released when you do that release to everyone else. But they are considered a public document if anyone asks.
Thanks.
Good. Guys, any other questions? Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, thank you again, Dorothy. I'm wondering what action, other than not approving the final evaluation, what actions can an individual make if they feel like their voice is not representative in the final assessment, the final evaluation?
So you have a discussion at the meeting and you have the opportunity to say, you know, I made this comment or I have this thought and I didn't see it. I think it should be included. And if the rest, you can convince the rest of the committee to agree with you, then it goes in. So it's always a draft until you vote to say, this is the evaluation. So that opportunity for input, if you feel your voice isn't reflected, is at the meeting where you're discussing the evaluation.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, so to continue with Mike's train of thought there, if, let's say that in the composite evaluation, there is a rating that, you know, one person disagrees with, they make a compelling argument, can the committee kind of line item veto the composite evaluation and we can change it in that
Sure.
meeting?
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead, Sharon.
So I want to go back to more what was at the beginning of the presentation. I think that what you said was that we'll get a copy of what all the goals were that we had determined and a copy of all the evidence that goes with it, and then an evaluation form.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so who writes the evaluation form? Is that a standardized form that exists that we fill our goals into, or is that a form that is created by our?
So DESI has a form that most committees use.
Okay.
And it's tailored to the district. So the goals will be, what's the word I want? The goals will be put on the form for you. The indicator, the focus indicators that you used will be highlighted, or the other ones will be blocked out or something on the form. So the form will be ready for you to fill out.
So it's a standardized form that has our goals
Yes.
filled in. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, Dorothy, this might be a good opportunity for the personnel subcommittee to step in a little bit. We met just earlier tonight and we finalized those forms, Sharon. And I asked Alita to post them to the meeting materials tonight. And she is so fantastic that they are already there. So if we go on to the materials page, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to share my screen very quickly. So that we can look at those at the form. So ultimately on May 4th, Kirk is going to give you his self-evaluation, which is this form right here. It is almost identical to the tool that you will use to write his evaluation. And so, excuse me, this is his self-evaluation report. He will complete this and it has all of his goals already loaded into it. Can you guys see this document that I'm showing you? Okay. His goals are already populated in here. He had 3 goals. And then these are all of the focus indicators that we settled on, that the personnel subcommittee settled on, and that the committee voted on when he presented this to us. So he is going to evaluate himself using this tool. He is also, I believe, going to give a presentation to us on that evening that is going to be filled with evidence, you know, whether he wants to hyperlink things in or however he wants to present that evidence. And then you guys will, as individuals, complete this guy right here, which is the individual summative evaluation report. It's almost identical to the one that Kirk uses. And this is where you guys get to make comments. You are going to assess his progress toward each goal. And then at the very bottom of all of this, you are going to need to come up, like, then there's all the standards. At the very bottom, you are going to need to come up with this overall summative evaluation, and comments are, of course, encouraged. Those individual reports will then, the 10 of them will come to me, and I will then build that composite and bring it back to the committee on the 18th. And the committee can, you know, we can discuss it, change it, or just vote on it wholesale. Go ahead, Kirk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since you mentioned it, and thank you for pre-populating that document, that is going to make my life a little easier. Thank you. Since we just completed the entry plan process at the previous meeting and it was loaded with so much information, I just want to remind the committee, my intention is to take those goals and link in the various presentations, communications, all the things that we've done. So when we get to that summative evaluation meeting, it's actually going to be much shorter, much more brief than the entry plan presentation, because that was dense and had the detail of information that's been collected thus far. So I just wanted to remind the committee of that. But what I'll do for the ease of looking at it in the self-evaluation is that's where you'll see the quick links to those various presentations and the things that we've done throughout the year.
Awesome. What other questions do we have, if any? Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
What's the turnaround time that we as committee members will have to get it done?
Yeah, great question. So Mary and I have mapped it out. May 4th is when Kirk will give us his presentation, his self-evaluation. The committee will then have exactly 1 week until the 11th or sooner if you choose, that's fine. But the 11th is the deadline for you to submit your individual evaluation to me. That then will give me 1 week to write the composite, which will be put into the meeting materials for the May 18th meeting. And that's when we'll vote on his evaluation. All right, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so if the if we're supposed to be filling these, or if Kirk gives us his evaluation, his self-evaluation on May 4th, it's my understanding that the meetings for the strategic planning don't end until well after that, mid-May or so. So what does that mean in terms of his ceiling for his ratings?
So I would say, Mike, that this is the conundrum all educator evaluation faces, is that we need to be able to wrap this up before the school year is over, well in advance, actually. Yet most of our goals don't get accomplished until the last day of school. And so we will be evaluating Kirk before all things come through to fruition. And I think that that is just a natural part of the process. And, Kirk's development as our superintendent is, of course, ongoing. And as he submits this summative evaluation and we complete it, he's already setting goals for the next time around with our feedback at the summative. And I think that, Kirk, you're looking to try to kind of create that district improvement plan by what date for the next go around?
Yeah, we'll be bringing the strategic, we're going to talk about that in our next item. It's going to come before the committee June 15th.
So can I just insert here that, probably my guess is that Kirk will be able to tell you what is planned to happen between May 4th and the end of the year. And it just makes me think of a lot of school committees who called me in March or April or May of 2020 and said, hey, wait, all our goals just got put aside. And the advice that we gave was, if you saw that if the pandemic hadn't happened, if you hadn't closed school and you saw that good progress was being made and you could extrapolate that the goals would be done by the end of the cycle, then consider that they were done, that they were met.
Mike, does that help?
It does, yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm not seeing any additional questions. Oh, Mary, go right ahead.
Just one more thing, that Leah will be sending out the survey, which is part of our goals. And so it'll seem very familiar to you because we did it pre, and then we did it mid-cycle, and now following Dorothy's presentation on the summative and all that you've learned. And I'm also very proud of you. We didn't have a lot of questions because everyone has been taking in this information, it seems to me. So we'll see how you do on that survey. You know how quick it is, but that'll be the final survey and the final piece that the personnel subcommittee will have. So that will be coming from Leah.
Yeah, and we'll share those results with you guys at the next school committee meeting, and you're all going to demonstrate your expertise in that survey. So All right, well, I would just like to extend one more time my deep appreciation for Dorothy's help, her guidance, and her presence. Thank you so much, Dorothy.
Well, you're very welcome. And again, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to be in touch. And
Great.
with that, I will leave you to the rest of your meeting.
Great. Thanks again, Dorothy.
Yep.
See you later.
Bye.
All right, everyone. So here we go to our next item on the agenda, and that is our strategic planning forum. And I'm going to turn that over to Kirk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would, at this point, would direct Mr. Haresh to the next item on the agenda so we can take care of that strategic planning item starting right now. This actually is a very exciting time for us. We have a couple of guests that we're bringing in tonight, Mr. Ed Lee and Zeph Giannetti, both fabulous educators through the Teaching Learning Alliance that are going to be working through us this, along with Scott Borsell, to work on our strategic plan. We're no longer talking about the launch of our strategic plan work. We are actually in action as I sat in with Dr. McGuire and educators in Nashoba with our consultants this afternoon at 3:30 to do the first of 5 workshops. And so tonight is a workshop for the school committee. So in that way, I will still be in the room, but I'm going to go into the background, camera off, because this is your opportunity to share with our consultants our strengths, the things we're thinking about, and what are the opportunities we have in front of us. Because as they gather up this information over the next 5 focus sessions, we're setting the foundation for what's to come. And that work is going to begin in earnest with our committee. I would like to thank Chair Viverito, Mr. Jerez, and Ms. Pock for being the representatives, one from each of our towns, that are going to participate on the strategic planning team. So I'm very gracious to the 3 of you that will be on that. That's going to be a lot of work, 5 consecutive meetings of 3 hours apiece. And they will ultimately lay up to that moment on June 15th, when the first draft of our strategic plan is presented in front of you for consumption over the summer months, of which we will come back to at retreat, ultimately then to put in front of the committee in our fall meeting for approval of our strategic plan. So with that sort of summary, I am going to turn it over to Mr. Lee and Mr. Giannetti to lead us through a workshop. And I'm here, but I'm now just going to kind of drift into the shadows. So, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Superintendent, and good evening to all. I will quickly be going over the short presentation to have you better understand the process that we will be using for strategic planning. So I'm going to share our screen with you tonight and short PowerPoint. Then we're going to be asking for your input on this particular piece. Is everyone able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you. One of the things that we will do this evening is, first, let me introduce myself. I am Ed Lee. I work for TLA, which is Teaching Learning Alliance. And Teaching Learning Alliance is a small nonprofit out of Woburn. I am a leadership project manager, and I will go over, some of the process for a strategic plan. Zeph, why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Good evening. I'm Zeph Giannetti. I am a consultant with TLA, 36 years in education. I'm retired school superintendent from Mansfield Public Schools, and I worked for many years as an administrator in 5 different districts. So happy to join you this evening.
Great. So just quickly, the strategic plan is really made up of 3 phases. The first phase, which we will be conducting tonight, is made up of forums and us collecting information and data from the district. It's really to build the foundation. The second phase is a more internal process, which we will be doing with 3 of the committee members, as well as the strategic planning committee. And in the third phase is after the plan has been created, it's the dissemination of that particular plan. So just quickly, phase 1 is probably the most important component of this plan, is to collect the data to really inform the process. We hope that the decisions that are determined within the strategic plan and creating objectives. So strategic objectives is what we would create. And they're typically, 3 to 5 strategic objectives. And there are strategic initiatives that will be created to meet those objectives. In this phase 1 plan, what we're doing this evening, as we started this afternoon with the staff, is we'll be talking to you about strengths, challenges, and opportunities within the district. At the same time, the central administration has been gathering data and providing us with data around ex post facto data. Those are the things that currently exist. For example, your MCAS results, perhaps graduation rates, things that are readily available to us, as well as we'll be collecting, the qualitative data from the forums and a quantitative data from a survey that will be released. That is for the phase 1, it's much broader. So we try to touch every single school constituent as well as the community and get a broad base of perspectives on what this district does around strengths, or the district's strengths, challenges, and opportunities. In phase 2, what we do is we create a strategic planning committee that typically will meet 5 times, depending on how quickly we can get through those things. And what we'll do is we'll take a deep dive and look at the data that we have collected as part of the forums and as part of the collection process through the survey, as well as the data, the ex post facto data that I talked about. In this particular area, after we look at the data, also we'll clarify the mission. So we'll take a look at your current mission and we'll make modifications. We'll look at the core values that really define Nashoba Regional, and we'll develop strategic objectives, initiatives, and outcomes. And from there, we'll work with central administration to assign those responsibilities and timelines for those objectives. The very last thing we'll do is we'll create a theory of action. In phase 3, so what will happen is that at the end of phase 2, we should have a final draft of the plan. And the final draft of the plan will then go to the entire school committee for approval. And I'm sure that what will happen is the 3 members will communicate some of the processes as we go along. In phase 3, what we'll do is once the plan has been approved, it will go out for desktop publishing. Some of the things that what we hope to do is that this plan should be a living document. It should be something as a guiding document for the district. What we hope to do is that the district or the school committee would take that, and that should inform the priorities within the district, which should also inform the priorities of the superintendent. The superintendent will thus take it and work with building leaders and staff. So typically, if it turns into the goals and objectives for the superintendent will also take those and have them formulate the goals and objectives for the principals, who will thus take them down a level further into the teachers. So in essence, everyone is working towards the same goals. It should also inform your school improvement plans, as well as any other activities that you might have that have plans, technology plans. All of those should fall under the larger umbrella of the school, of the strategic plan. In phase 1, we started phase 1 in January, working with central office, and we hope to be done by the mid part of this month. And we should start phase 2. Phase 2 is where the strategic planning committee will start to analyze that data and put together the plan. And phase 3 starts after the approval of the school committee. So that, in short, is what the presentation or what the process will be for strategic planning. Are there any questions that I could answer for you at this point before we ask for your input? And because we're on Zoom, as you know, why don't you, this is very informal. If you have something to say, typically what happens when we ask for your input, we'll receive initial input and then people will build upon that. So I encourage you to do that. Any questions about the process? Well, then I must have been very clear. Thank you. So at this point is when we'll ask you to do some work, right? So one of the things that we're going to ask you, we'll start off with strengths. What are the strengths of Nashoba Regional, right? And what we'll ask you to do is, what are those things that you talk about, those best aspects of Nashoba Regional? The next thing we'll ask you is challenges, areas of improvement, threats that may reside within the district and outside the district that impede your progress. And then opportunities. This is a nice opportunity to think about ways to capitalize on this strategic plan, to move ideas forward that perhaps have been stalled, or for new ideas. When you think about these strengths, challenges, and opportunities, I want you to think about, most importantly, the student achievement. The goal of any school district is to improve student achievement, but that's not the only things that you're involved in. Talk about the teaching, learning, and leading. Talk about resources that are available, which you're obviously very familiar with and often present the biggest challenges to school committee members. Partnerships that exist within the school district that we may not be aware of, or partnerships that you're looking to perhaps build upon in the future. And any other thoughts around strengths, challenges, and opportunities. So I'll provide another opportunity for you to ask questions before we start with the process of seeking your input.
Any questions?
Okay, well, here's where you go to work. Talk about the strengths. Let's start with the strengths of Nashoba Regional. What are the strengths that come to mind when we talk about the best qualities in Nashoba?
Would like to start? Go ahead, Rich.
The community.
Great. So talk a little bit more about the community, Rich. When you say the community, what does the community exactly do that brings that to mind? A supportive community?
Yeah, a supportive community. The community's engaged. You can just tell by the school committee, I feel. I can just tell from the instruction, parents are involved in influencing that. There's a lot of other institutions that work well. Like I just saw a play recently that was really excellent at the school. Our sports are great. None of that happens without, an engaged community. So
I actually heard a couple of things, that the athletic program sounded like it is a strength, and it sounded like there's also extracurricular activity, because a drama, is that summarizing your thoughts? Those are all good. And I will say that
those are just some of the ideas I have. I bet you if you surveyed the people here, I don't really know of I'm not sure I even put it this way, of a weak area. I'm not even sure I would address it if I did know it, but I don't actually know of any. It seems to me like there's a ton of strengths. Mm-hmm. And I think this process, which I'm excited about, is gonna just accentuate all that.
Great. One of the things that I will say is that this is very similar to a brainstorming activity. There's nothing right, there's nothing wrong. I think that what we're seeking is really your perspective and your input. And I know that sometimes you may talk about something that may be happening at the high school that may not apply to the middle school or the elementary level. But still, if it's a strength, then we really want to hear it and record it.
Sharon, go ahead.
I have two thoughts that I wanted to put out as strengths. One is we have fabulous educators in our district. They are dedicated, they are hardworking, they are innovative, and they are so committed to our kids. And the second thing is we have a fabulous, and Rich mentioned this a bit, arts program. We have a great sports program, But we also have a fabulous arts program, drama, music. It's just fantastic.
Sure. That's great. We heard that earlier today also with staff members.
Thanks, Sharon. Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, I have a few things to offer. One is just engaged parents. I think Rich mentioned it, but I'm not sure it made it on your list. I think we have 3 communities where parents really want to be involved and try to find ways to support the school system. I think we have a huge offering of extracurriculars from elementary all the way up through high school. And that is really a strength of our district. And the third thing is academic excellence of our students. We have students that go on to do amazing things based on the education they get at Nashoba. So those are 3 things that come out.
Would you limit that just to kind of college preparation, or are the students prepared also out for careers?
I think I wouldn't limit it. I mean, I think that the focus tends to be on college preparation.
Sure, like most districts.
But I
But
don't think.
college and career preparedness is essentially what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Looking for more golden hands. Anybody else want to weigh in on our strengths? Yeah, Mary.
So in addition to the academic excellence, we know that we have whole students and looking at the whole child. And so social and emotional learning, which absolutely underpins academics, doesn't take away from academics. Social emotional learning has aspects that increase student participation and increase student academic achievement. So this district has a focus on that, and we see the dividends. And the other that I would say is a focus on global education and understanding that we're connected in this world. If we didn't know it, we certainly do know it now, and that so to be thinking and doing things and having service locally, it can have implications and does have implications, extending globally, and learning other languages, learning about other cultures, how important that is across the curriculum. So I would say social emotional learning and global education are huge pluses.
I also heard kind of high student participation in academics as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Great. Go ahead, Karen.
I just wanted to add in that I feel like our educators are, a large majority of them are very accessible. That if you as a parent need to reach out and get some information or ask a question or need help with an issue, that accessibility is very high of our administration and of the staff. And I also feel like a strength for us is that the focus is the attitude when you walk into the buildings is just very positive and student focused. And as Mary said, the focus is on the whole child, and the schools feel like a place where the kids really want to be, and that doesn't happen everywhere. So I would say that's a strength for us.
Yeah, so a real positive school culture
Yes.
throughout the district.
Safe environment, you would call that?
Yep, positive and safe environment.
Safe, but also just it along with safe, it just
Welcoming.
the staff are happy to be there. They're happy to see the kids, and that you feel that the moment you walk in.
Thank you.
I'm sure that if you speak with our staff, they know more than we do, but I would add that we have a really powerful robotics program that creates opportunities for kids to not only work engineering skills, right? That's career oriented, but they also get to travel, they compete in this academic realm. And I think that the other really powerful program that we have that has enormous student participation is our DECA program,
Yes.
which is preparing students for all kinds of business application.
Mhm.
And so they have hundreds of kids who participate every year and go and compete in Boston. And so, we do have really strong athletics, and I am so proud of that. But we also have so many other balancers that all kids can find a niche, I think, in the Nashoba schools, which is, I think, great.
Great. So there's actually opportunities for all students. You feel like there's opportunities for all students to participate?
I do. I think that our faculty and our administration, they try to identify gaps and build programs so that all kids have outlets. Joe, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just have a quick question before I made my comment, because if the question isn't responded to the way I think it might be, then my comment would be erroneous. But you're looking for, when you say strength, are you talking about just the education that our students are receiving in the district? Or are you talking about the whole district in toto?
The whole district, anything that you can think about, even if, let's say, facilities was a strength. And I know sometimes that's a challenge in many communities.
I'm going to say this, and this may not be the first thing that would come to people's mind when they think about the strength of this district, but I will say that on measure, our district, at least over the past several years, has been sailing what I would consider a rather even keel. Now, that's not to say we haven't had our share of issues that we've had to deal with, but one of the strengths I see of this committee, or this district, is I see, for example, from my perspective, I see meetings that are generally cordial. There's not a lot of contentiousness. We're not named as defendants in regards to any parent groups who are upset with the programming that we're having in our schools. We seem to be mercifully devoid of those sort of controversies that sometimes affect some of the school districts. Not pointing any fingers, but if I were going to point fingers, I'd probably say east of here. So I think it's one of those, I think it's a strength of this district. I mean, I look at this thing, we generally tend to sail an even keel. We don't seem to have a lot of controversy among the committee. We're not being disciplined by our chair for violating open meeting laws and what have you. I think we sail an even keel, and we do a pretty good job in educating our students.
So there's you're cordial, you're friendly, and there seems to be consistency as well. Did I summarize that, in how you interact? So I'm talking about the interactions.
Yeah, I mean, if you're dealing with a lot of school districts, I mean, there are some school districts that, you get to their school committee meetings and it's a battle royale. We're not like that here. We tend to keep it cordial. We tend to keep it friendly. We're congenial people here. And again, I don't want to give any examples, but I mean, even recently there was a case involving a school district. It came out on the 15th. It was Wellesley. I mean, Wellesley was involved in a lawsuit regarding a matter that they felt was an appropriate program for their schools. And whether it was or not, we seem to be mercifully devoid of those types of contentious issues here in our district.
Well, you're very lucky. Both Zeph and I are career educators, so we probably have about 75 years between us. And you're right. Not all committees are cordial and friendly and work together. And that's unfortunate, but you are very lucky and rare to have a situation like that.
So to summarize, I'm taking notes, it would be, you describe it as a stable, consistent environment within the school committee, operating cooperatively, something to that effect?
Yeah, yes.
I mean, it seems to be a high level of cooperation.
One of the nice things about doing this process and speaking to all the groups is that you really get a good feel for the community. You quickly become, you understand the community, and many of the things that you're saying are consistent with what the staff has said. So that's a great indication that you got a great community. So.
Great. Amy, I think I see your hand, and then Mike. Is your hand still up, Amy?
Yeah, I was just gonna request that the last slide of their presentation, if they could share that.
Sure, I can share it. What's happening is that when I share it and Zeph is writing, once you put it on Zoom, it doesn't go to real time, but let me see if I can do this for you. So as he's inputting it, you may not, I'll share it and let's see how it works. Right, and I'll come back and continue.
If it's too much trouble, don't worry. I didn't realize he was looking into
We
it. I
want
just,
to share. Let's give this a try. Can you see that?
Yes.
As he starts to input, it doesn't go live, so I'll refresh it every now and then. And so you can see the things that we're writing.
Is that what you wanted to see, Amy?
that was not what I was thinking. There was
Are you looking for the last slide to give you ideas? Is that?
Yes, I thought there was like a slide that, yes,
This slide.
Yeah, I just thought it might help
Absolutely.
spark some ideas. So.
Right. We typically, you know, in these situations, it's we've obviously done it in this virtual environment, but we sometimes do it face to face. So it gives you more opportunities to provide this slide as we would write on easels. So I'll leave this slide up.
I think I saw Mike's hand for strengths. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I had my hand up for the past 10 minutes. Then I realized my camera has been off for the past 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever.
I was not ignoring you.
Yeah, sorry about that. I want to go back to, you know, everything that people have said so far. I like sort of like, okay, that's been said. And my checklist has been kind of filled out. I do want to identify a couple of things that haven't yet been said. I do want to recognize that I feel like we have an outstanding facilities department. We have a communicative facilities department. They're flexible. I've seen instances where they are fiscally creative and trying to develop, you know, sustainable solutions, or even if they're temporary solutions. I think they're incredibly talented, and I think they do a wonderful job in maintaining our grounds and our buildings. And I think that that's a really big strength in our district.
Great.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, okay. You know, and we also have we've talked a lot about our educators, and really can't say enough about the educators in the district. That's the foundation of any strong district. But I also want to acknowledge that I think we have incredible administrators, and we have administrators that are really act as leaders, and they work tirelessly with intentionality and with purpose. And they work towards building culture, a really positive, sustainable culture. They're also really creative. And I noticed that both the facilities department that I mentioned earlier and the administrators, you know, I recognize both that they're creative in both respects. So yeah, those are the two things that I figured I'd mention.
Great. I know that we have limited time here, and we can come back to strengths, but I'd like to also talk about challenges that you have within the district as well. And I'll bring you back to the slide around challenges. You know, when we talk about challenges, what are we talking about, right? We're talking about those areas of improvement. It could be an existing program, for example, that can be improved, or it could be threats, you know, the things that are holding you back. What are those things within the district? Is it budgetary? Is it facilities? You know, so you can talk about the whole host of things, and I'll bring you back to this particular slide.
So,
what are the challenges? What are some of the challenges?
Well, I think may I speak, Madam Chair?
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. Okay. I mean, I think one of the challenges we have is we're a three-headed monster, right? There's 3 towns that are roughly about the same size. I guess you could almost call it a democratic strength too, right? No one town has. If you look at some of the other regional schools around us, like say Clicker, Carlisle, like at Sudbury, Acton, Boxborough, there tends to be one town that's bigger than the other. And you know, I'm sure they try to be equitable, but there's an outside influence by the larger town, either in terms of budget or people or parents or kids, you know what I mean? And I think we'd have to ask Kirk to chime in on the enrollment number because I don't remember, but you know, it's pretty, I'll use the word equitable, I guess, between the three towns in terms of the number of students, you know, even that go to the regional technical school, Minuteman Regional High School. I believe there's about the same with all three towns. So getting back to the challenges, you know, I just think it's a challenge. I will say another challenge seems to be the way difference, you know, I don't want to uncork a troubling issue, but like there's different philosophies in how towns manage their finances. Yes. And it manifests in how I think it reflects the cultures of the towns somewhat, and therefore it filters it up into the budgeting process, and that somewhat becomes a constraint. How about that?
Great. So, Rich,
can I interject for a second? Would you list that also, the three towns, as an opportunity as well as a challenge? Because you referenced that in the beginning of your remarks, that it was also, you felt the strength of the district with the balance.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it is because the towns are socioeconomically not hugely different. And, you know, I would also say again that, you know, there's not one town that outsizes the other ones. So I guess I'm agreeing with you, Zeph.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to go to Sharon.
I want to preface this by saying everything is relative, but I think that a challenge that we have is that it is hard to I might need a minute to figure out how to put this word back into words. We have, it can be hard to really tailor to the kids that march to a different beat. And we could do a better job at really understanding those kids and helping them to not be successful. That's not the word I'm looking for. Helping them to be all they can be. Even when they're not a typical student.
So is the population you're talking about, for example, in my town, I live in Hanover, and 90% of the students participate in athletic events or music, right? There's that 10% that doesn't necessarily, I won't say doesn't have an identity, but is not connected as well as the other 90%. Is that the population that you're talking about, Sharon?
I guess I'm thinking more about, I guess if I had to say it globally, what I'm thinking about is that we have a population of kids that are on IEPs and are receiving services, and we have a really good SPED program.
Yes.
And we have the population of kids that are those, what you would consider those traditional learners that just, they do great in the traditional academic model that we have. And then there are these kids that I call the gray area kids that are in between. They're not kids that are special ed kids, that they're not kids that are an IEP kind of kid, but they're kids that don't really thrive in that traditional academic setting. And I think we could do a better job really understanding those kids and figuring out what it is that makes them tick so that they can really achieve their best potential.
I wrote down inclusive of different learning styles. Does that adequately summarize what you were describing?
Good summation.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Amy, then Mike, then Karen.
Okay, I'm having a hard time putting these into the category of challenges or opportunities, so I'm going to let you parse that out. But
Sure.
So I think that one of the challenges that we face in a regional school district with 3 towns that have their own elementary schools and middle schools or a K-8 school is the transition to high school and community building that occurs during or as part of that transition. I think that that's something that we could improve upon. Another area that Rich kind of brought up that I'll say in different words is that a challenge that we face as a regional school district is budgetary pressures from each town that have limited revenue sources other than residential property taxes. So it always feels like each year it's a struggle each year to find a budget that works within those constraints. I think an opportunity perhaps is and the challenge that we face is the ability to offer world languages at an earlier age to our students. And I think a challenge or an opportunity is to have policies that support our commitment to DEI. So that's my list.
Great, thank you.
I just, I'm just typing, excuse me for a second. Ability to offer world languages at a wider range of grades, correct?
Earlier.
Earlier. And what was the last one? I'm sorry, I was typing.
Policies for DEI.
Yeah,
Pardon me?
policies that support our commitment to DEI.
Okay.
You also talked about that a challenge was the transition to high school and community building, but I think we listed both as a challenge and an opportunity to improve in that area.
Great.
Sounds good.
Let's move over to Mike.
The great thing about this process is that I get to hear perspectives from everybody, which is really cool because there are things that I might not have thought about. So I appreciate that. I'm going to echo what Amy said, that it's hard to understand where the challenges bleed into the opportunities because all challenges create an opportunity. That's just the nature of challenges. I'm basing this off of our entry plan findings from the superintendent. It feels like we have disparate approaches to how we do business at the classroom level. And I don't know that we have created a system or put systems in place where teachers can collaborate and innovative on a far more regular and consistent basis. And so it feels like, there are little micro philosophies happening here and another micro philosophy happening here. And, I think that leads to somewhat different experiences for students. And so I would like to see us, innovate in that way and tap into, and, again, this now sounds like opportunities, but tap into, the most current research on teaching and learning and on collaboration and on assessments and interventions and programs. Sometimes it feels like we're a little stagnant and sometimes it feels like we're dynamic. And I'd like to move the parts that are more stagnant into a more dynamic feel.
So you're talking about that kind of job alike. We had heard a little bit about that earlier prior to the COVID or prior to the pandemic, that teachers, let's say from the 3rd grade, were able to meet among the 3 communities and kind of coordinate. Is that the opportunities that you're talking about, Michael?
So one of the things, and Leah, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like our teachers get together in their PLCs on a semi-regular basis, but not on a consistent basis. I know that in our district, we meet every week. I mean, we meet every week and we talk about where we are in the curriculum. We talk about revamping an assessment. We talk about common assessments so that we can have lateral comparisons. But that can't happen for teachers unless they're given a system where they can meet, where that's built into their schedule.
Right. Okay. For
Thanks, Mike.
PLCs and a common planning time as well is all those things that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
teachers are allowed to coordinate with one another.
Yes.
Right.
Karen.
Thank you.
Well, one of mine really piggybacks on Mike's, that I think one of our challenges, and it's already underway as an opportunity, it's in Superintendent Downing's goals to really work on having consistent resources and structures to meet the needs of all learners, and to have that process be more data driven, so we can really look at a wide variety of data and information when we're considering the needs of kids. And so that's one piece. The time to do that, and teachers need time to collaborate consistently in order to make that a reality. And then the other piece, and I actually said as a strength, that I think we have, that teachers are very accessible, but I think one area of communication, I don't think we do as good a job in terms of our communication to certain populations of our community. So for example, whether it's English learners or it's parents of students with special needs, I know our district does a really good job. I know we have really hardworking special educators, and, for a large majority, timelines are met, all of those pieces, but it's a very confusing, it can be a very confusing process for families. And I hear a lot, I'm a special educator, so I do hear a lot from parents that they're still a little confused on processes and what exactly do IEPs mean? And it's not, I don't think it's for lack of trying on part of our staff, but I wish we could see that challenge as an opportunity to put some things in place so that some of those things were a little bit more user-friendly for parents, so that they felt they were more understanding and part of the team as those processes move forward.
Karen, are you talking about the actual process, or are you talking about communication of that process?
Well, I think I think a lot of it is the communication of what's happening in the process and what's happening for students. I feel like for a lot of parents, and for me, it's second nature because I've been doing it so long, and I forget sometimes. I think we as educators forget sometimes that for parents, even if they've been involved with special education for a while, it can still be hard to navigate. And so if we can put some things in place that go above and beyond meeting our timelines and procedures so that they feel like they really understand what's happening. And again, it's not for lack of hard work. I know people are working really hard, and I don't think it's a challenge for our district alone. I think it happens many places, but I do think it's something we could work on.
Absolutely. In some of these things, they'll turn into initiatives, and initiatives, I think, help us to work smarter, right? And I think that you're saying they're working hard enough. If we could get them to work, there was a better plan or there was a smarter plan. You don't necessarily have to work harder. You just have to work smarter.
Sure.
Great. Thanks, Karen. And Joe, just before I go to you, I wanted to jump in because something that Mike said I wanted to elaborate on a little bit, and that is this word consistency. I think that this is a challenge for all school districts. But I think it's ultimately so important because it goes right down to the basis of each child's experience. And so building consistency across the 3 elementary schools, just building consistency across 3 classrooms is incredibly difficult. But then building consistency across the 3 elementary schools so that, for example, and across the 3 middle schools, so that when children come out of 8th grade, they all have the same level of Spanish 1. Spanish 1 means the same thing in this middle school, and this middle school, and that they are comparing testing, right? They're using data to try to assess the programming for that consistency. I think that from K to 8, it is a little bit easier because the teachers are closer to each other and they are working in teams by nature. I think that once we get up to the high school level, and again, I am also a high school educator, so many of us on this committee are, at the high school level, I think teachers start to move into silos just by nature of the hectic day. and that there can be 3 English 9 classes being taught by 3 different teachers. And depending upon the teacher, the child can have an incredibly different experience. So that in this class, X is happening, but in this class, Y is happening. And so to build out more consistency in everything that we do should be the goal, so that the experience of the child is the same no matter which teacher they have, no matter which classroom they're in. I think too, consistency of extracurricular activities. So when one school brings in a really innovative program, we should look at doing that for all the schools. When one school takes kids to DC, all of the schools should probably do that, because these are all Nashoba children. And we want all of our Nashoba children to have the same experience or as close there too. And so I know that there's a lot of hard work that goes toward that, and it all requires time and energy. But the notion of consistency based upon data is something that I'm very interested in addressing. And so now I'll go to Joe.
Anyway, Chairman, you actually just took all the sail out of my winds with that comment, because I was, that's okay. No, you said it much more eloquently than I did. I was just going to say that, I actually have 2 observations, and one of them has to do with, consistency and cohesiveness across the district. And it from the educational standpoint, it sort of bleeds a little bit into the administration, because I know that some frustrations are seen with some of our advisory groups relative to communication and how communication is administered at different schools, and they have different communication processes and different cultures of the school. So, but I think you said it much more eloquently than I did. But the other point that I want to make, and it was sort of spinning off my original point about our strength, is that while I think that our district and our district committee tends to be a cordial one, I would say that one of the, and I wouldn't call it necessarily a weakness or a criticism, I think we're sometimes victims of our own circumstance, that I do think that as a district, we have not, I think that we have faced some challenges in our dealings with our local bodies politic. I think that sometimes that we've found ourselves on the receiving end of some, what I would consider undue criticism from some of our select boards and some of our elected officials in our towns. And I think that there is sometimes a lack of understanding that as a school district, we are an independent regional school district and not subject to the oversight and authority of our local select boards. And I'm not sure that we've really done a good job in bringing that home to those individuals and who serve in our communities. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Joe. Let's go back to Mike.
Sorry, that's an old hand.
Oh, okay. So I'll go over to Amy.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to our list of challenges that I think communication has been an ongoing challenge for the district, to try to find the right level of, frequency and detail and methods. And, in that bucket is finding, having enough staff to be able to keep up with the ever-changing kind of demands for information. So whether that's the website or, somebody sending emails or whatever it is, that's a challenge that I know is already on the horizon and is an opportunity that is going to be addressed, but I just want to make sure it gets captured in this list.
Great.
I think I see Sharon's hand.
I just kind of want to build on that a little bit too, that the comments that Amy made and that Joe made too. In the past, and some of it I would say maybe is the distant past and some of it not so distant, but the district has had some challenges. And I think that there are long memories, and it's hard sometimes I get the feeling sometimes that people remember what happened 10 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever, and they still have feelings about it. And so we're still held back by challenges that happened in the past. And I think a piece of it really goes to this communication that we really need to be better at really teaching everyone what we're all about, and who we are and what we're doing and why we're doing it and all of those good things. Because otherwise I feel like sometimes we get trapped in this sense of, I'm not quite sure what the word is. Distrust is the word that's coming to my mind, but I'm not sure that's quite the right word. But we get trapped a little bit, and I'm not sure that it's really what's happening now as much as it's what happened previously that we haven't let go of yet.
I understand entirely what you're saying, but I'm having trouble summarizing it. So it's almost, you're speaking almost to current practice and mission being communicated to, I'm hearing that you're trying to put out what's really happening as opposed to what's perceived as happening based on past history, correct? So that would speak to communication. So how can we define that around clearer communication to give an accurate picture of what's happening currently, something to that effect?
Can I chime in here? Because I think
Please help me.
I think that the challenge is overcoming the history of mistrust that has happened in the past, but that we are overcoming
past history and establishing trust. Okay, that seems to be a great way. Does that work?
I think too that it's a little bit about driving the narrative. So, if you don't have a strong grasp of your own narrative, it's hard to escape the past. And so I happen to think that we are in a new era where we have leadership that is starting to craft a narrative that we can all believe in and get behind and adopt, and it will start to fade the memory of other things that are behind us.
That's great. Okay, so I summarized all that as overcoming the past history and driving the present narrative. To summarize it?
Yeah.
Great, a thumbs up. Okay, thank you.
I know that the committee had scheduled us for 1 hour, and I want to respect that as well. I know that we could probably talk about hours about all of these things, but I just want to make sure that we're not imposing upon your time if we proceed. Perhaps we can close up, because I know that it's probably going to be a long evening for you, that if you have any additional pieces, and let me explain this process as well, that we will also be sending out a survey. So as in many meetings, as you know, when you attend, you go, oh, I should have said that, right? So in the survey that we'll be sending out, there'll also be areas in which you can provide a narrative description of some of your feelings. So you can actually expand upon that particular piece. And all that information is the information that we will analyze when we try to determine the objectives and the initiatives for the district. So I guess I'll ask you to close up on some of the challenges, opportunities, and strengths, if you have anything else. And if you don't, then I'll turn it over to the Madam Chairwoman.
And could I interject for 1 second? I think the last comment of overcoming past history and driving the present narrative may fit into your opportunities category as well. Would you like me to move it into that column as well?
Both columns.
Overcoming past history and driving present narrative, we had as a challenge, but it presents almost as an opportunity as well. Yes?
I see it as an opportunity.
Okay.
I think Mike has his hand up. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm only sharing this because I agree. I like to sleep, so I don't want this to go on for forever. But I do want to talk about one opportunity that's worth mentioning. We just hired a superintendent that has created multiple opportunities for the collection of data, and through his leadership, I think he's allowed the data to speak for itself and has allowed it to steer many of our decisions. And so we have the opportunity to establish a culture where we collect and curate robust data and then use that data to craft policies and procedures. And so that gives our communities an opportunity to feel like their voices are better heard, and it helps our district administrators and the school committee to feel like they're far more responsive to the community. So I think that this notion of collecting data and then interpreting that data to inform how we move forward is really a tremendous opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Sharon.
I just want to add to what Mike said, that collecting data, but it's not just quantitative data. We need the qualitative data as well.
Absolutely. That's all included as part of the process. And I think that what you have described is a well-developed strategic plan should provide that kind of direction that helps the community move in unison towards your goals, right? It'll help you narrow your goals. And actually, when I say it's a guiding document, for example, when the federal money comes in, you shouldn't sit and say, oh, well, what should we spend this money on? You should refer directly to your strategic plan, and that should highlight all the priorities that the larger group, all of your constituents have had input on in determining those priorities. So again, in respect to your time, we have all the time that we can continue to talk, but I will leave that decision. I know that you have an agenda to follow, and I know we want to narrow this down, not to make it go on. I will say that there'll be additional opportunities to provide input. I know 3 of the committee members will be part of the strategic planning committee. So they'll be the voices of the committee on the strategic planning committee. But are there any final thoughts or comments?
Madam Chair, may I interject?
Please.
This is a very valuable process, and thank you for participating in this workshop discussion tonight. It is just a slice of all the conversations, all the data sources, all the things that we're collecting as part of this process. On Friday, in the superintendent's update, I spoke with Mr. Gary Mestis, who works on the surveying component of this. It is comprehensive. And I know that our community has some survey fatigue this year, as we've been very dedicated to getting our community engaged in the work that we're doing. But I am going to call on our community to do this one last survey this year. And it is partitioned according to which sort of subgroup you meet. So the same survey is going to go out to the community. It's going to go out to our municipal stakeholders, to our students, to our staff, to gather up this information. So this will be going out this Friday, and it will be an opportunity for people who cannot participate in the forums to also give their input. But we encourage people to participate in both the forums and the survey, as that's going to be valuable information for us to break down and disaggregate. And this survey really is comprehensive, as we've talked about surveying learning programs this year, communications, reaching out around issues on how to spend our federal grants this year. This survey, people are going to see, encompasses all those buckets. So it'll be nice to cross-check against some of the more micro surveys we've done this year to look for threads of consistency as well. So I'm just going to encourage everybody to do that. So thank you for the little plug there, Madam Chair.
I would just thank Edward and Zeph for coming in and helping us today. It's just the beginning.
Welcome. Pleasure to meet you folks.
Thank you. Thank you. On behalf of TLA, we've just been through 40% now of the forums, but we're getting a really good feel for what the district looks like, the regional district looks like. And I applaud the school committee for your dedication to improving the school district. I know, sometimes good deeds don't go unpunished, right? Or go. So thank you for your commitment. Thank you for this evening and your input. And I look forward to working with you in the future. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. So we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, and that is citizens' comments, because apparently the meeting's just starting. We have no citizens' comments this evening. So we'll move on to the next matter, and that is the consent agenda. And I turn to my vice chair for a motion, perhaps.
Certainly. I'll move to approve the consent agenda for April 6th, 2022, containing the meeting minutes of March 23rd, 2022, and the warrants of April 8th, 2022.
And I'll second that. Is there any discussion? All right, let's take the vote. Rich?
Yes, yes.
Myself, yes. Amy?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
I think I got everybody. I think my connection is unstable, so I apologize, guys. So the consent agenda is unanimous. We now move on to our superintendent's update and turn it over to you, Kirk.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you again to the whole committee for participating in that workshop. So I will hit my talking points very succinctly tonight. It's funny how a superintendent update can change with the moment of a day, and my current update has changed. I would like to announce to our school committee that Miss Shelley Dulski of Denver, Colorado, coincidentally speaking, has been hired as the new principal for the center school in Stowe. And so Miss Dulski, I've been referring to her as Dr. Dulski, and as Attorney Gleason knows, from time to time I get tripped up on titles, particularly when I'm referred to as Dr. Downing, and I'm clear not a doctorate. She has a Juris Doctorate with the education specialist distinction. So when you fold those two together, what does that equal? I'm actually not quite sure. But we're going to be sending out a press release. This announcement was sent out to the Nashoba faculty and staff today, as well as the Stowe community, and couldn't be happier that she's on board with us. And not to put this member on the spot, but I'm hoping Ms. Devine might just say a sentence or two regarding this candidate, as Ms. Devine was involved in the hiring process.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I don't know if you saw me. I started to clap when you announced that. I'm
Yes.
thrilled. I'm thrilled. I think Ms. Dulski is a really strong candidate, and I have to tell you, I was listening to the community forums last night with the candidates, and I loved that she stopped to say hello to a child that popped into the screen. And I just thought, yep, that's what we're looking for. She's incredibly articulate, knowledgeable, child focused. I'm really excited that she's coming in Nashoba.
Thank you. So I'm shocked that I'm actually sharing this news with you this evening, because I fully anticipated this would take me into next week, given the times. It is a competitive environment out there. The school committee should know. If you're somebody like me that is researching candidates and looking for where our candidates are interviewing and competing, it was incredibly hard to do this year, because superintendents are not giving press releases on their candidates. They're keeping them close to the vest in an effort to land those most talented educators. And I'm extremely happy to say that we here at Nashoba got one of the finest candidates out there, and she'll be joining us July 1. So that's great news for our center school community. Quickly on the MOU update, at the next meeting, I would like you to consider taking up a vote to approve the annual MOU for our school resource officer. I have gone over the MOU line by line with Chief Nelson of Bolton. Since the high school is located in Bolton, that is the law enforcement agency we work with. And there's no significant changes to the MOU over past years. There was some recommended changes based upon the school committees and the SRO collaborative, just to make some clear distinctions around when does an SRO get involved and when does school leadership take over in terms of a school handbook if there's a violation or something happens. SROs get involved when the law is broken. All other matters are handled by the school administration. The SRO does not participate in any school investigations whatsoever. There's a clear line of distinction there. And I've had some questions about that. So I just wanted to be explicit about that. But what I want to say more so is when I recently was at the senior event for spring activities, our SRO, Casey, was there. And I just had an opportunity to be by the door. And I see Stavros has entered as one of our educators, can attest to this. As the kids are coming in, they're high-fiving her. They're telling her about their week and they're asking questions about who she is. There's a relational component there that I think is excellent for our schools, our students, and for our school system to have partnerships for our public servants and first responders that are there, and they're there for the best interest of our students. So, Madam Chair, I ask that we put that on next agenda for approval of that contract. The next item is I'm just pointing to our policy subcommittee because I think that's probably the best place to host a conversation, decide what to do there. But with the recent change in the minimum wage and looking at our wages across the school system, I want to make sure that we have a policy in place in perpetuity that addresses minimum wage changes as they come. I believe we have another minimum wage change coming January 1st of this next year to bump to fit. It was a 2-tier increase that the state legislature approved. Rather than having to continually come back to the committee to get approval for those positions that are at risk of falling below that we always maintain a standard of the state minimum wage. But then we also look at what are the market conditions for whatever the employee's role is, as we do on a regular basis. So there's no action or discussion to have on that tonight. I'm simply asking that we add it to a future agenda for the policy subcommittee, and we can vet out that idea in that subcommittee. Next, on the health update, we've continued with our testing processes. There's nothing significant to update you on other than as we had an uptick in our Lancaster Elementary School, we consulted with the Lancaster Board of Health and the Nashoba Boards of Health, reviewed all of our policies and examined that. So we followed through with what ultimately we decided back in March on how to handle the situation. And I'm glad to say that we've made it through that bubble moment there. But I will say, as we're working on the website and getting things in the places where they belong, I'm going to be moving the COVID data dashboard into the health and wellness section, Nurse Gilbexy's section of the web page. And I will notify, I'm not going to do that until after April vacation. So we'll give our community notice of where to find it from. And as you know, I've included that link in my communications as well. And then I will skip the strategic planning piece because I think we had a nice summary there, strategic planning, and move on to that I'm going to be appearing on April 28th at the Nashoba Area Social Justice Alliance meeting at the invitation of the leaders of that committee. And it's going to be a great event where I'm actually going to be interviewed fireside chat style by some of our Nashoba students that have generated questions around looking through a lens of equity and inclusion for all students in our school system who can feel marginalized and not part of the quote unquote mainstream. And so I look forward to that event. It's going to be a chance for me to engage with those students and learn from them and have a dialogue. As I said last meeting in my entry plan findings, as we look at looking through a lens of equity and building a sense of belonging for all students, we have to have the courage to have conversations. And this is going to be one of those moments where, you know, I said I'm going to come as your superintendent, but also as a learner, because I'm never going to be at the end of that journey of learning what it's like for somebody else that might feel like they have the deck stacked against them. So I look forward to that chat, and I look forward for the people to tune in to listen. And with that, I want to turn it over to Dr. McGuire for the teacher and learning report.
Thank you, Superintendent. Just quickly tonight, Just a debrief and a review on our March 18th Professional Development Day that took place on Friday, March 18th. It was once again highly successful as we look forward to it all year. We had over 38 workshops and presentations throughout the day. Challenged still a little bit with it being virtual. We're hopefully looking forward to that day being in person next year. But really just a message of thanks to the community, a message of thanks to the school committee. You know, we feel so incredibly fortunate to be supported and have the resources that we do to be able to offer a day like this for all of our faculty, for all of our staff. You'll see there in the superintendent's report, you know, we always make sure that we provide an opportunity to get feedback from all participants. So that's just a snapshot in terms of how the day went for folks. This year, we also instituted individual feedback for each of our presenters. So for each of our workshop presenters, we were able to offer them and give them real detailed, specific feedback on their own presentations. So that informs where we go, you know, in the future with our professional development. And I also, just the shout out to Joan DeAngelis, in special education and people personnel services. She always provides us with a tremendous amount of connections to the Accept Collaborative. Her transition students programs put together all of our goodie bags for all of our faculty and staff. It's a great project for those kids. She also helped with the student work and the videos that we embedded into our break and lunch breaks as well. Our high school students who created all those fantastic logos for the day. Even the Bolton Bean is always a sponsor for us and offered discounts for our teachers for coffee and donuts and muffins on that morning. Those feedback forms will be incredibly informative for us. I'm able to speak to each presenter. And then I've also provided a resource link at the bottom of the superintendent's report. If you click on that, you'll find all of the resources and any slides or presentations that were incorporated with any of our presenters. So there's some great resources in there around diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as social emotional learning. So that's a great resource for anyone if they want to even get in contact with one of our presenters or just access any of the materials that they have. So a huge thank you to the Nashoba community, another successful PD day. And we're, as you can imagine, we are already thinking ahead to next year and the things that we can bring in and do for the community. So thank you.
Thank you. That shall conclude the report, Ms. Favorito.
All right, very good. Does anybody have any questions about the superintendent update? Joe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Superintendent Downey, I just have a quick question. It pertains to the memorandum of understanding with the Bolton Police Department. And perhaps even Ms. Masterson might be able to help me with this. But do we approve? I mean, first of all, are you required to secure committee approval before execution of this, or is this within the scope of your authority to simply sign that memorandum of understanding?
Mr. Gleason, I think I'm bringing it for you just because that was past best practice that I'd seen in my previous systems. But there's nothing in terms of contract approvals via state statute. As a matter of fact, as we're working on the regional agreement, Dr. McCarthy did share the positions that were required of that. It is a common move I've seen, particularly since there was an update to that contract. And there was some discussion about the SRO position as I came in. So I just thought it was a prudent measure is all.
All right. So I guess my question is do we know how this document was created? Who created this document?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yes, this is a document, a draft document that was made with the police associations, and I believe it was the MASC. I think it was MASC that worked on them with it, and there was public comment at the state level that was out this past year for folks to comment on, as it was a draft document.
I'm sorry,
Mr. Gleason, I'm struggling to remember the exact body.
No, I don't want to put you on the spot here because this is just for information purposes. But
yeah,
just looking at it, and there was some questions I had regarding some of the language. It's a very wordy document, and I'm just, I mean, if it's within your discretion to sign, I'm certainly not going to make any further inquiry. But if you were looking for approval from the school committee, I might be inclined to make some inquiry at the next meeting. If
Okay.
that's going to be presented. Okay. All right. I just want to wait. All right.
And Attorney Gleason, I know your propensity to be able to dig in and find all those things that maybe my eyes don't grab. So that's actually appreciated. But I'll get some clarity on that as well, because if it's not a legal requirement, I would understand that. So I'll work on that with the chair and get back to you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Any other questions about the update? We're good. All right, so we're going to move on to our next item, and that is our new business. And we're going to start with our DECA trip approval vote. It seems to me we have a couple of special guests here who run our DECA program. So Kirk, maybe you can cue this up for us.
Yes, I would like to introduce Mr. A, as the kids like to call him, because it's a lot of letters inside your mouth. It's an alphabet soup. Stavros Andriopoulos. Close. Perfect. Okay, very good. I have to tell you, Mr. A is our outstanding DECA teacher, and I had the pleasure this past December of being invited in to the mock DECA event where I got to work with some students. And when you know it, just a few weeks ago, one of those students who actually participated in some of our visioning work sent me a personal email to say, we did it. And he had the trophy of their win at the state level, as they are one of the teams that are moving on to nationals now. It was a great event. I know Dr. McGuire participated. Maybe there's some others here that did, but I just wanted to offer that celebration before Mr. A has an opportunity here to put before you his request for these students to attend. I will say there's no cost to the school committee, but we always have school committee approve out-of-state travel when they're traveling under the Nashoba umbrella. So Stavros, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us here tonight, and just in general, just for always supporting our program in the past. I wanted to introduce my my colleague Kate Norton. She's somewhere on your screen as well, but she's new to Nashoba this year. She's doing an excellent job, and I have to acknowledge how big of a part of the program she is too, because she's doing awesome. And we have a really, really big program this year. We had 210 members at the high school, which is the biggest we've ever been, which to be honest with you, I thought we'd have some growing pains and adjustments coming back from COVID, but it looks like that was, kids were ready to jump back in and have, get back into learning and go back into the normal stuff, what they do. And DECA is definitely one of those normal things that they usually really like. So we were excited to kind of have a normal year. So I think you guys received our letter. Would you guys like me to reread that, or should I just summarize that?
We actually, Mr. A, we actually have a motion already prepared.
Okay.
For acceptance. And, at this point, I would just turn to the committee to say, and Kate, yes, I don't see you on my screen. So I believe that you're out there, and I want to congratulate you on a job well done as well. But at this point, Madam Chair, maybe questions from the committee about the event, and then we could entertain the motion.
Yes, so any questions from anyone about this trip? Stavros, can you remind me where you're going?
Yeah, so I can give you the basics again. We're heading down to Atlanta, Georgia. This is the International Career Development Conference for DECA. So it's, we always call it nationals, but I think it's the US, Canada, and Germany. So it's kind of limited international. But there's 30,000 students from across the country, and those limited countries that I just mentioned. That it's the best of the best, and like Mr. Downing said, we have our best out of the best going to down to the conference and representing us well. Last year, we had top 6 finish in all of the world, which is pretty exciting. So I'm hoping we can go down there and do some damage and represent Nashoba really well once again. But We would be leaving on Saturday, April 23rd and returning on April 28th. So it's a 5-day conference.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, so I'm going to turn to Mike.
Yeah. Before I make the motion, I just wanted to say, Stavros and Kate, thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Kate, welcome to the district. You know, at the strategic planning portion of this meeting, we were talking about how strong our athletics program was, but also how strong our club and extracurricular programs were. And I forget if it was Amy or whoever it was. DECA was the first thing that I thought of. Like DECA just pops in my mind, and truly the district is really, really lucky. The high school is really, really lucky to have such a strong club that represents us so well. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
so
thank you so
anyways,
much.
with that, I guess I'll move to approve the Nashoba Regional High School DECA Club to attend the National DECA competition in Atlanta, Georgia from April 23rd through April 28th, 2022, consisting of 11 students and 2 advisors.
I'll second that. Any discussion?
I did amend the motion to say the 23rd, but that was just based on what Stavros was saying.
Is that okay, Stavros?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we'll go for the vote. Rich?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Joe?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes, and congratulations.
Mike?
Yes.
Sean?
Luck, everybody. Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
And Karen?
Yes.
Think I got everybody? All right, motion passes. Have a great time, guys. Best of luck.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming. All right, everybody, on to our next item. Under new business, we are fortunate to have the leader of our CPAC with us tonight. Charlene Cabral is here, and she is going to provide us with our annual presentation on all of CPAC's accomplishments. So welcome, Charlene. Glad to have you.
Madam Chair, if I may for a moment, I want to seize this opportunity also to offer my thanks and gratitudes to Attorney Kerbal and all the hard work that she put in this year and being a partner with me in soliciting feedback from our parents throughout the school year. So learned some invaluable things. So I just want to say thank you. And the floor is yours.
I just need a second here to make sure I can get the screen shared. How do I do that? There we go. That working?
I can see part of it. There it is.
That working now?
Perfect.
Okay, wonderful. So I do want to note that Michelle Powell is also here today. She's my co-chair, and she is the one that put this PowerPoint together with me, but mostly her because I am more tech challenged. So without further ado, I want to thank the district committee for this opportunity to give you the Nashoba CPAC year in review for the year 2021-2022. So oftentimes people do not know what is CPAC. So CPAC is a state mandated organization. It is a parent advisory council on special education. Membership is offered to parents of children with disabilities and also all interested parties. So that means anyone in the whole world can be a member of our CPAC. The nuts and bolts of it is that CPAC's role is to advise the district on special education and also to help educate parents on special education. And really tantamount to CPAC's role is understanding the struggle. And it's not just a struggle, it's also a joy of what it's like to be a parent of a student with special needs. Now we do have a little YouTube video here, but we know that these things can belabor the presentation. So we'll just cut out the video presentation right now and state that the video does highlight some of the struggles and the joys of being a special education parent, and that CPAC is one avenue of support for parents with children of special needs. The current population data for our district, we have 3,088 students enrolled in our schools as of this past weekend. 599 of those students have IEPs, 250 of them have 504 plans. So the percentage is actually about 27.5% of our population, which is rather significant. And these are pre-K through 22, to give you a full picture of our demographic. So what does CPAC do? Well, we build a bridge between Nashoba Regional School District and our Nashoba parents. This year, we had a remarkable opportunity with the introduction of a new superintendent. Superintendent Downing has really gone above and beyond working with us. We invited him to have a meet and greet right in the beginning of the school year. He also participated in a Q&A virtual session, and CPAC had worked with a literacy subcommittee group for a couple of months, and we brought together a report to the superintendent, and he reviewed that report with us as well. We've had an amazing opportunity to work with the superintendent this year, and we really appreciate it. So how does CPAC fulfill its mission? It does so by communication and collaboration, advocacy and assistance, resources and resourcefulness, education and information, and support and socials. Basically, CPAC cares. With respect to communication, we have met regularly with the superintendent and the director of People and Personnel Services. We've provided informative newsletters to CPAC members. We've got a second newsletter coming up soon. We've updated the CPAC pages to provide consistent and uniform CPAC information. At one time, all of the schools had different information about CPAC, and they were all going to different pages. We've also, in that update, to let member Karen Devine know, we've put in some cheat sheets, some accommodations, shortcuts, like the lists of accommodations that parents might want to look at, abbreviations that are on your IEP and you may not understand them. There's parent handbooks there to better explain the IEP process. So there actually is a lot of information on the CPAC and the director of PPL's websites to help parents of students with special needs. We've created and distributed new marketing materials. We've communicated directly with parents, often phone, email, in person. We've requested a district event calendar to be created in the future, and the superintendent has agreed. This will hopefully really help facilitate event planning and meetings, and will also hopefully help to do that cohesiveness in the district so that students in Lancaster can know what's going on in the Stowe schools and vice versa. And our social media manager has created a separate new website. Collaboration. We have worked with the districts to develop 2 surveys. We've worked with the district on various CPAC initiatives. We've collaborated with the district parent organizations, both PTOs and the Bolton PAC, to co-sponsor the first district-wide event for all Nashoba parents. As far as we can tell, this is the first time that anything like this has happened in the district. We collaborated with several CPACs throughout the Commonwealth to co-sponsor presentations. And we are the first Nashoba CPAC in recent history to create subcommittees to address CPAC goals and projects. Committees. Speaking of committees, we created 5 committees: the Literacy Committee, Survey Committee, Transition Committee, Disability Acceptance Committee, and Bylaw Committee. Our literacy committee was comprised of several CPAC and general education parents because CPAC is open to any interested member. We met weekly for over 2 months to produce a literacy report regarding literacy concerns. We submitted that to the administration. The superintendent met with a core group of the literacy committee, and the director of pupil and personnel services met with the CPAC chairs to review the report and provide feedback. This report and feedback will be on our NRSD website and will be discussed at our meeting in May. You may recall that actually the superintendent actually used some CPAC communications as resources for his entry plan. I believe it was at your last meeting. With regard to the survey committee, the CPAC survey committee collaborated with the administration to produce 2 surveys. One would be an IEP exit survey. This is predominantly the work of the director of pupil and personnel services, but we did collaborate to design questions in the survey. It is given to parents and guardians after their IEP meeting to review their IEP process. The second survey is a CPAC survey given to parents and guardians of IEP and 504 students to determine the needs and wants for the CPAC community. With regard to Disability Acceptance Committee, we've requested that the disability calendar be incorporated into the school calendar, and the superintendent has agreed. We requested and achieved the inclusion of disability acceptance into the district website's page dedicated to equity. We've highlighted the Nashoba student's DECA project regarding her auditory disability by having her present to the CPAC parents. We've presented a male and a female perspective of growing up on the autism spectrum. Actually, yesterday we presented the female perspective, and later this month, I believe on the 25th, we'll be presenting the male perspective. And lastly, we've had NRHS, the high school lit for disability awareness. Our transitions committee has been working on a new transitions pamphlet to inform parents about the importance of early planning and options available to our students. As a matter of fact, our transitions committee will be having a meeting next Tuesday. The link is on our website, but next Tuesday, the 12th. Other CPAC transition achievements, we've had 2 fantastic educational presentations this year regarding transitions. We also have new links on the NRSD CPAC website regarding transition planning. And there's our little guy transitioning before our very eyes. Our bylaws committee. Well, there's always a challenge, isn't there? And the bylaws is ours. Our bylaws are in serious need of repair, but they'll probably be addressed next school year. Because that's how we feel about the bylaws. We wanted to get other work done and not be stuck in the mire of the bylaws. Advocacy and assistance. CPAC supports in response to numerous families in their special education journey. This is private. This is the conversations that happen, the meets at the coffee shop, the phone calls, the emails. This is the part of CPAC that nobody ever sees, but it's probably the most important part of CPAC. We've made inquiries to the Nashoba administration and school committee representatives of Minuteman Vocational High School on behalf of parents in our district concerned about admissions at Minuteman. Have prepared a response, which is also going on our website if it's not there already. We've submitted special needs building accommodation recommendations to be incorporated at the new high school building project. We have presented our parents' concerns about literacy, and we've requested that the representation of disability be on the district web's page dedicated to equity. Resources and being resourceful. This year, we offered over $7,000 worth of presentations on a budget of $2,100 by collaborating with other organizations and negotiating with presenters, negotiating a lot with presenters. We collaborated with the Bolton PAC, Lancaster PTO, and Stowe PTO to co-sponsor a joint event this year and to provide next year's CPAC with a contribution of $250 each for a total of $750 to help CPAC, to fund CPAC events for parents next year. The whole thing about planning is that you can't just plan this year, you've got to look ahead. Collaborating with other CPACs in the Commonwealth has also helped us co-sponsor many presentations. We applied for and received funding from the Flutie Foundation as well. And we promoted Nashoba CPAC with a newspaper article in the Stowe Independent and reached out to district parents for their input and specialized knowledge. Educational presentations. We have had quite a few. In September, we had the role of the CPAC as well as the in-person meet and greet with the superintendent. In October, we only have to provide one presentation by law, and we must provide a basic rights presentation, which we did on transitions in October this year. In November, we presented a reading comprehension program by Catherine Kerrigan, who is actually a Stowe mom, and she has her own reading comprehension copyrighted program. She's a presenter not only for CPACs, but she does professional development at other schools and other school districts throughout the Commonwealth. And from my understanding, she was pretty instrumental in developing Sudbury's reading comprehension program there. We had a doctor from the Few Center presenting anxiety. We've concentrated a lot on social emotional type of presentations, particularly because of the pandemic. So this presentation on anxiety. We also had a BSEA appeals and mediation presentation for parents needing that information. This was an excellent program by Fern Bork of the Landmark School, College Search for Students Who Learn Differently. She has given us so much feedback and so much information. She's really, it was a very great presentation. We also had another virtual Q&A with the superintendent. We had Dr. Moldover present assessments. A social worker from Luck Incorporated, Molly Dislodge, presented Trauma 101, again, hitting our pandemic concerns. And then our Nashoba student, Elizabeth Wachtel, presented her DACA project about auditory disability and awareness in the community. She has a social media presence trying to promote disability awareness, and we really want to promote her for that. In the spring, this past month in March, we had executive functioning presentation by Sarah Ward of Cognitive Connections. We coordinated with 4 other CPACs to bring that presentation to our district. A week before the presentation, we had over 120 registrants from Nashoba for that presentation. I know that one of the district committee members was at the meeting, at the presentation. So were many of our teachers. And I really am very proud to say that I was happy to see a lot of the teachers present at that presentation. This second presentation in March, which was taking care of the caretaker by Dr. Robin Bradica of the Few Center. This was our PTO PAC combined joint presentation. So that was pretty special too, because it brought together all of the parent organizations in the district. This month, we had the Female Voice of Autism Spectrum presented yesterday by Rachel Barcelona. Later this month, we were going to have Dr. Carrie Magro present the Male Voice of Autism. We have a special education advocate presenting tomorrow, Cynthia Moore. And at the end of the month, Neurology of Reading with Dr. Gabb. Social and support. In September, we had a virtual social. In October, we had a listening meeting, which is also a virtual meeting where parents can come and just kind of get off their chest some issues with parenting and special education. That's both good and bad issues. Slaters in January 2021, we had an in-person s'mores, very cold in-person s'mores event at the barbecue there. In April, later this month, we will have another listening meeting, another virtual listening meeting. And Next month on May 5th, we will have an in-person ice cream social at Kimball Farms in Lancaster. In summary, we had 17 parent workshops, or we'll have 17 parent workshops, 5 subcommittees, 3 parent superintendent meetings, 3 business meetings, 3 parent socials, 2 parent listening sessions, 1 executive board meeting social, 4 reports to the school committee and RSD administration, 2 newsletters, and a partridge in a pear tree. We would like to thank all of you, in particular, the parents who worked so hard to advocate for their children, the parents who attended our presentations, we appreciate that, the CPAC board and committee members for their time, effort, and hard work, the PTOs and PACs for collaborating with us and promising to fund us next year, other CPACs for collaborating with us, and there are many more that are not listed there that have worked with us on sidelines on side projects, the Flutie Foundation, our presenters, Slater's Checkerboards and Kimball Farms, Kathy Turilli, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you a million times over for all of your administrative support. I know we've asked her to change the website about 5,000 times this year. Our principals who promoted our events, the district committee, Cheryl Gallagher and Kate Giannetti for providing us so much information, particularly with transitions and other things in the district. Facilities manager Rob Fraser for helping us light it up. Local churches and families who lit up for disability awareness. The director of business operations, Pat Marone, who writes all the checks. Director of People and Personnel Services, Joan DeAngelis, who is always listening to us, always answering a million questions, always making time when she has no time, but she makes time to listen to us and to get our questions answered, and we really appreciate that. Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Todd McGuire and his curriculum team for answering all the questions that we had in our literacy subcommittee. The Superintendent Kirk Downing for making this an amazing year, coordinating and collaborating so much, because it's been a robust, dynamic, and productive CPAC year. Thank you all for your support.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Charlene. That was a great presentation. You guys have been busy.
We have.
Amazing. So I'd like to open it up to the committee to see if you have any questions, comments, and I see Mike is first. Go ahead, Mike.
Charlene, thank you so much for that presentation. And I kind of feel like I may be opening up a bit of a Pandora's box, but to the extent that you're able to, could you return back to the slide where your model was banging his head against the keyboard?
Do you actually want to see the slide?
The bylaws, you said the bylaws are a mess and then you moved on.
Mm-hmm.
To whatever extent you can you kind of talk a little bit more about that and how that's evolving and how that's changing as we're moving forward?
Yeah, so the bylaws were very, very poorly written, and they are all contradictory. One article contradicts another article. Not even the titles of the positions are correct. It's really, really a mess. And in the beginning of the year, I wanted, my structural thought process was we fix the bylaws first, then we go on. But unfortunately, this year ended up being a very controversial year because there are forces at play throughout the whole Commonwealth where there are advocacy groups getting involved in CPACs. Because the state allows any interested party to get involved, well, these advocacy groups come in, they harness parents who are particularly upset, and then they fight the CPAC administrators. I believe the purpose is to try to overtake the CPAC and use this state mandated organization to deliver their narrative. I fought hard to just carry through, but I knew that fighting with this group month in and day out, month in and month out about the bylaws was just going to mean that we weren't going to get anything else done. So I concentrated on getting the work that really needed to get done, the things that parents had been asking about that I felt were more substantive. And we worked on that and left the bylaws to, next week. And as you can see, we've been very busy. We just didn't get to it. That answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike. Go ahead, Rich.
I think I lowered my hand too. Yeah, I have to say I'm very impressed. I have a limited access with, hold on one second. Sorry. Yeah, I just want to say I'm very impressed with everything that you've done. I didn't know that much about CPAC. I have one child that has some services. And I'll just tell you, I went on to the executive functioning webinar you guys had the other night. That was just amazing. I happen to know Sarah personally, so it was great to learn that other side of our professional side. I have been referencing it almost every day. I've been taking pictures of my kids' stuff in their bag and getting them to mime and rehearse their stuff. All these things that I do myself, but didn't realize that I even did it or it had a name. So I just want to say, yeah, I'm really impressed. I think the district is lucky that you have your committee, and I'm glad to have learned more. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rich. I'm going to go over to Sharon.
I just wanted to say thank you, Charlene, for that presentation, but more so, thank you for all of the work that you've done with CPAC this year. What a tremendous amount of work and activity and so many different things that you have offered to the CPAC community and the greater community this year. And it's just phenomenal. And it took an enormous amount of time, I'm sure, to get everything together. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks, Sharon. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, Amy.
I just want to briefly say, wow, it was impressive. We are very fortunate to have CPAC as such an active partner in our children's education. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to kind of spin off a little bit of what Mr. Horish had alluded to, and without getting into specifics, and just, I know that a lot of people in this committee like to look at the data. So I'm just going to make one comment in sort of following what Mr. Horish had said, that if you want to look at data, one of the things you might want to look at in regards to what Mr. Horish was alluding to is that there has been a serious uptick in open meeting law violation complaints regarding CPACs that have been filed with the State Attorney General's office. And one just has to look at behind the curtain of that and where those complaints are coming from. And I think that that will lend some guidance to those who have any concerns along the lines of Mr. Horish. So I'll just leave it at that. It's been an unusual year for the Office of Open Government at the Attorney General's office in regards to CPACs. And there was actually a recent decision that came down. I think it was in November, Charlene, I think it was, that that CPACs are not necessarily subject to the open meeting law unless their bylaws so provide. So, where there's smoke, there's fire, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Any other questions for our CPAC chair? All right. Well, at that, Charlene, I will say one more time, thank you so much for all of your service. It is greatly appreciated by us and by our district. Yay.
Thank you all. And particularly, I want to thank the district administrators who worked so hard with us. I've emailed, I've called, I've gone like this and saying, oh my God, I'm going to contact them again. And they always respond. You know, they've been amazing. And I know that they've got 5 million other things to do. They don't need to have my extra email or, you know, message, but they've really been amazing. And I also want to note that when working with other CPACs, and I think that this is significant, I've had a lot of conversations with regional leaders of other CPACs, and I feel that many of these other CPACs do not get 1/4 of the respect and the access that our CPAC has had with the administration. And I think that's really important to note, you know, like you were saying at the earlier part of this meeting about old memories of, you know, bad experiences or whatever. I really want people to give the new administration a chance. And I'm not saying that there was anything wrong with the old administration. I'm just saying, give the new administration a chance, because you can't just go in with a negative light and paint the whole district with a negative light because something happened 5, 10, 15 years ago. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks again, Charlene. Appreciate your time.
Goodbye.
All right, everybody, great. So let's move on to our next item on the agenda, and I'm going to toss it over to Dan. Aubie has been so patient. Dan, I wonder if you have anything to report to us tonight.
I do, thank you.
Great.
So just starting things off, we have the junior prom coming up. It's on May 27th. We also have the senior prom on the 20th, I believe. So that's pretty exciting for a lot of people. And regarding that, the prom, I've heard that there was a lot of great fundraising that went into it, a lot of hard work put in by the class president, you know. That's great. Other things, you know, the seniors are going to be leaving relatively soon, you know, that's coming up. Just keeping an eye at that, keeping it on the radar. There's also, there was mentioned that a volleyball tournament was being planned, so that's kind of exciting. That could be pretty cool. I'm excited to see what that could look like. We have class plays coming up this Friday as well. Softball and lacrosse have both had games, and robotics has made it to the semifinals. I think you guys heard that. Also, there was Earth Day that was approaching, so I think there's some events planned for that. I don't know a ton of information on that, but that'll be something to look forward to.
Thanks so much, Dan, for that report. I'd open it up to the committee if you have anything that you would like more information on. Amy, I can sense it. Do you have a question?
Well, I did want to ask Dan if he had any anything to report on the college front, because I know that I think regular decision day was just a few days ago, and what you're hearing from your fellow students about how that whole process went for them. I don't know if you can speak to that. I was trying to remember what year you are.
Are you referring to the seniors?
Yes, that's why I was hesitating about asking my question. So
Yeah, I'm a junior, so I don't know a whole ton about it. Sorry.
no problem at all. That's why, like I said, that's why I was hesitating.
But I will guarantee that there are many who are engaged in that tumult right now. So best of luck to all of our seniors.
Definitely.
Yeah, so great. Thanks so much, Dan. We so appreciate having you here. We really do. So on the agenda, we're moving on, and we have no unfinished business because that's just the way we roll. We finish our business. We are going to move on to subcommittee reports. And Mike or Rich or Brett, please feel free to give us a budget and warrant subcommittee report if you have one.
As secretary, perhaps I'll do so. There are only two officers, the chairman and me. We did not meet. We're scheduling a new one. Thanks.
Okie doke. I'll move over to the communication subcommittee. Any report?
We meet tomorrow. That's my
Fantastic.
report.
And to our building committee, Joe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As you all know, we had our first public information forum last week at the high school. There were approximately 50 people in attendance for the forum. I wanted to thank Mr. Eckel for attending. He was sort of representing the district committee of those of us who are not members of the building committee. I think it was a very informative and enlightening forum. I think that there was some really good questions. It's available on Bolton Cable Access, and I don't think they put it on YouTube as well, but it's something worthwhile watching. And if you have any questions about the ongoing build project, I'm sure that these questions will be answered by watching the video. The building committee is going to be meeting in advance of April vacation next Tuesday. And I have seen the agenda, and it looks like we're going to be having we have a rather monumental issue to come before us at our next meeting. So I will leave it at that. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thanks, Joe. To the personnel subcommittee, we have wrapped up most of what we're doing. Please remember that we're going to be sending out that survey to you all about the evaluation cycle and your knowledge of it. And now to policy.
Policy will be meeting on Monday, so we have nothing to report right now.
Okay, great. And then just Karen, note that we need to throw that new item on for not maybe this meeting, but the meeting after.
For the next meeting in case, yeah, I already did the agenda. I can add it on if we want to, but we can figure it out.
No rush, right, Kirk? It can wait. Okay, so then maybe the meeting after.
Yeah, okay.
All right. And continuing on for our audit advisory, anything new, Rich?
We are still trying to schedule a meeting before one of our members leaves the country for a couple of years.
Oh boy.
So we'll try to do that. In the meantime, based on my track record, my time in the committee, Pat has been managing things properly. So we've never had any issues as long as I've been on this committee with our audit. So we will validate that with the committee as soon as possible.
Great. Thanks, Rich. And to Dear Jay, Sharon.
No report.
Great. Thanks. Mary, does our AAAC want to share anything out with us?
And here I was thinking that I wouldn't have anything to say, but one member of the RAAC suggested that we have one more meeting to really be able to make sure that the whole advisory is all set with the version, and before we give it over to school committee. So we will be meeting Tuesday, April 26th at 7:30, and that will be the final meeting.
Awesome. Thanks, Mary. And Brett, is there anything that you'd like to add around CPAC?
Not this time.
Yeah. All right. So guys, those are our subcommittee reports. I would just like to very quickly remind our chair people that you should be paying attention to the goals that you set at the beginning of the year. We will be having a share out at the tail end. I'll add that onto the planning calendar and just so that we can kind of check our work and see if we've actually accomplished what we set out to do. So on that note, items for next agenda. I have the planning calendar up here. I can share it with you guys. As you can see, this is our only meeting in April, but our May meetings are quite full. And I think it would be best if we didn't add anything new. But I am certainly willing to hear you out. Mike, can you see any hands? Any golden
Yes.
hands?
Yes,
Go for it.
my own hand.
Go for it.
I don't know if it's up there, but our vote on in-person meetings or an update on the feasibility of in-person meetings.
Yes. And
I can
so,
provide that update of what we figured out in my next superintendent's report.
Super duper.
that would be great. I think too that we might also, well, I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. We need to come to terms with the adhering to the nuanced version of hybrid meetings that is seemingly going to be allowed, but because the governor's order goes through June 15th, I don't think actually we need to act on it until September. Mike, any other golden hands? Any other questions that you can see?
I don't see any.
Fantastic. So everybody, I am going to move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Rich. Rich, you vote first.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mary,
Yes.
Sharon,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Brett.
Yes.
It's unanimous.